Chapter 35. The Crossroads was the place for the ambush. Any vehicles approaching it had to slow down for fear of accident, and it was concealed from the distant Heddleham gateway by a thick clump of oaks and laurel. This also promised good cover for lurking. Accordingly, we made our way there that night. The boy crawled along the base of the hedges beside the road. I flitted in front of him in the guise of a bat. No sentries materialized beside us. No watchers flew overhead. The boy reached the crossroads and burrowed into the undergrowth below the biggest oak tree. I hung from a bough, keeping watch. My master slept, or tried to. I observed the rhythms of the night, the fleeting movements of owl and rodent, the scruffles of foraging hedgehogs, the prowling of the restive gene. In the hours before dawn, the cloud cover drifted away, and the stars shone down. I wondered whether Lovelace was reading their import from the roof of the hall, and what they told him. The night grew chill. Frost sparkled across the fields. All at once, it struck me that my master would be suffering greatly from the cold. A pleasant hour passed. Then another thought struck me. He might actually freeze to death in his hiding place. That would be no good. I'd never escape the tin. Reluctantly, I spiraled down into the bushes and went in search of him. To my grudging relief, he was still alive, if somewhat blue in the face. He was huddled in his coat under a pile of leaves, which rustled perpetually with his shivering. "Want some heat?" I whispered. His head moved a little. It was hard to tell whether it was a shiver or a shake. No. No. Why? His jaw was clamped so tight it could barely unlock. "It might draw them to us." "Sure it isn't pride? Not wanting help from a nasty demon? You'd better be careful with all this frost about. Bits might drop off. I've seen it happen." Leave me." "Suit yourself." I returned to my tree. Some while later, as the eastern sky began to lighten, I heard him sneeze, but otherwise he remained stubbornly silent, locked into his self-appointed discomfort. With the arrival of dawn, hanging about as a bat became a less convincing occupation. I took myself off under the bushes and changed into a field mouse. The boy was where I had left him, stiff as a board and rather dribbly about the nose. I perched on a twig nearby.
"How about a handkerchief, oh my master?"
I said. With some difficulty, he raised an arm and wiped his nose on his sleeve. He sniffed. "Has anything happened yet?"
"Still a bit under your left nostril, otherwise clean."
"I meant on the road."
"No, too early. If you've got any food left, you should eat it now. We need to be all set when the first car comes by."
As it transpired, we needn't have hurried. All four roads remained still and silent. The boy ate the last of his food, then crouched in the soaking grass under a bush, watching one of the lanes. He appeared to have caught a slight chill and shivered uncontrollably inside his coat. I scurried back and forth, keeping an eye out for trouble, but finally returned to his side.
"Remember,"
I said,
"the car mustn't be seen to stop for more than a few seconds, or one of the sentries might smell a rat. We've got to get on board as soon as it reaches the crossroads. You'll have to move fast."
"I'll be ready."
"I mean really fast."
"I'll be ready," I said.
"Yes, well, I've seen slugs cover ground more quickly than you, and you've made yourself ill by refusing my help last night."
"I'm not ill."
"Sorry, didn't catch that. Your teeth were chattering too loudly."
"I'll be fine. Now leave me alone."
"This cold of yours could let us down big time if we get to the house. Lovelace might follow the trail of
Listen." "What?"
"A car coming from behind us. Perfect. It'll slow right here. Wait for my order.
I scampered through the long grasses to the other side of the copse and waited behind a large stone on the dirt bank above the road. The noise of the oncoming vehicle grew loud. I scanned the sky. No watchers could be seen, and the trees hid the road from the direction of the house. I readied myself to spring, then hunched down behind the stone. No good. A black and shiny limousine, a magician's car. Too risky to try. It flashed past in a welter of dust and pebbles, all skirling brakes and shining bonnet. I caught a glimpse of its occupant. A man I did not know, broad-lipped, pasty, with slicked-back hair. There was no sign of an imp or other guardian, but that meant nothing. There was no point ambushing a magician. I returned to the boy, still motionless under the bush.
No go.
I said.
Magician.
I've got eyes.
He sniffed messily.
I know him too. That's Lime, one of Lovelace's cronies. Don't know why he's in on the plot. He's not very powerful. I once stung him with some mites, swelled up like a balloon.
Did you?
I confess, I was impressed.
What happened?
He shrugged.
They beat me. Is that someone coming?
A bicycle had appeared round the bend in front of us. Upon it was a short, fat man, his legs whirring round like helicopter blades. Above the bicycle's front wheel was an enormous basket covered with a weighted white cloth.
Butcher?
I said. The boy shrugged.
Maybe. Do we get him?
Could you wear his clothes?
No.
Then we let him pass. There'll be other options.
Red-faced and perspiring freely, the cyclist arrived at the crossroads, skidded to a halt, wiped his brow, and proceeded on towards the hall. We watched him go, the boy's eyes mainly on the basket.
We should have taken him out,
he said wistfully.
I'm starving.
Time passed, and the bicycling butcher returned. He whistled as he pedaled, making light of his journey. His basket was now empty, but no doubt his wallet had become nicely filled. Beyond the hedge, one of the sentries trailed in his wake with great loping bounds, its body in tattered robes almost translucent in the sunlight. The butcher freewheeled into the distance. The boy suppressed a sneeze. The sentry drifted away. I scuttled up a thorn stem that ran through the bush and peered out at the top. The skies were clear. The winter sun bathed the fields with unseasonable warmth. The roads were empty. Twice more during the next hour, vehicles approached the crossroads. The first was a florist's van, driven by a slatternly woman smoking a cigarette. I was about to pounce on her when, out of the corner of my mouse's eye, I spied a trio of blackbird sentries sailing lazily over the copse at low altitude. Their beady eyes flickered hither and thither. No chance. They would have seen everything. I hid and let the woman drive on her way. The blackbirds flew off, but the next passerby served me no better. An open-top magician's car, this time coming from the direction of the hall. The driver's face was mostly obscured under a cap and a pair of driving goggles. I only caught a flash of reddish beard, short and clipped as he shot by.
Who's that?
I asked.
Another accomplice?
Never seen him before. Maybe he was the one who drove in last night.
He's not sticking around, whoever he is.
The boy's frustration was getting to him. He beat a fist against the grass.
If we don't get in soon, all the other guests will start arriving. We need time in there to find out what's going on. If only I had more power.
The eternal cry of all magicians.
I said wearily.
Have patience.
He looked up at me savagely.
You need time to have patience,
he snarled.
We have no time.
But in fact, it was only 20 minutes later that we got our chance. Once again, the sound of a car. Once again, I crossed to the other side of the copse and took a look from the top of the bank. Immediately as I did so, I knew the time had come. It was a dark green grocer's van, tall and squared, with smart black mudguards and a newly washed look. On its side, in proud black lettering, were painted the words, Squalls and Son, grocers of Croydon, tasty comestibles for society. And to my great delight, it appeared as if Squalls and Son themselves were sitting in the cab. An elderly man with a bald head was at the wheel. At his side sat a chipper youth wearing a green cap. Both looked eager and well spruced up for their big day. The old man's head seemed to have been buffed until it shone. The field mouse flexed its muscles behind its ambush stone. The van drew closer, its engine rattling and growling under the bonnet. I checked the skies. No blackbirds or other dangers. All clear. The van drew abreast of the copse, out of sight of the distant Heddleham gateway. Both Squalls and Son had wound down their windows to catch the pleasant air. Son was humming a happy tune. Midway past the copse, Son caught a slight rustling noise from outside the cab. He glanced to his right and saw a field mouse whistling through the air in a karate attack position, claws out, hind legs foremost, right at him. The mouse plopped straight through the open window. Neither Squalls nor Son had time to react. There was a whirl of inexplicable movements from within the cab. It rocked violently to and fro. The van swerved gently and ran up against the dirt bank at the side of the road, where its wheels skidded and slipped. The engine petered and cut out. A moment's silence. The passenger door opened. A man who looked very like Squalls hopped out, reached back in, and drew out the unconscious bodies of Squalls and Son. Son had lost the majority of his clothes. It was the matter of a moment to drag the pair across the road, up the bank, and into the depths of the copse. I hid them there under a bramble thicket and returned to the van. This was the worst bit for me. Gene and vehicles just don't mix. It's an alien sensation to be trapped in a tin shroud, surrounded by the smells of petrol, oil, and artificial leather, by the stench of people and their creations. It reminds you how weak and shoddy it must feel to be a human, requiring such decrepit devices to travel far. Besides, I didn't really know how to drive. Nevertheless, I got the engine started again and managed to reverse away from the bank into the middle of the road, then onwards to the Crossroads. All this had taken scarcely a minute, but I admit I was anxious. A sharp-eyed sentry might well wonder why the van was taking so long to clear the trees. At the crossroads, I slowed, took a hasty look around, and leaned towards the passenger window. "Quick, get in!" A nearby bush rustled frantically. There was a wrenching at the cab door, and the boy was inside, breathing like a bull elephant. The door slammed shut. An instant later, we were on our way, turning right along the Heddleham Road.
"It's you, is it?"
He panted, staring at me. "Of course. Now get changed, quick as you can. The sentries will be on us in moments." He scrabbled around on the seat, ripping off his coat and reaching for Son's discarded shirt, green jacket, and trousers. How smart this outfit had been 5 minutes before. Now it was all crumpled. "Hurry up! They're coming!" Across the fields, from both sides, the sentries approached, hopping and bounding, black rags flapping. The boy pawed at his shirt.
"The buttons are so tight, I can't undo them."
"Pull it over your head!" The sentry to my left was approaching fastest. I could see its eyes, 2 black ovals with pinpricks of lights at their cores. I tried to accelerate, pressed the wrong pedal. The van juddered and nearly stopped. The boy's head was halfway through the shirt collar at the time. He fell forward against the dashboard.
"Ow! You did that on purpose!"
I pressed the correct pedal. We speeded up once more. "Get that jacket on or we're done. And the cap."
"What about the trousers?"
"Forget them. No time." The boy had the jacket on and was just jamming the cap down on his tousled head when the 2 sentries drew alongside. They remained on the other side of the hedges, surveying us with their shining eyes. "Remember, we shouldn't be able to see them," I said. "Keep looking straight ahead."
"I am."
A thought struck him.
Won't they realize what you are?
They're not powerful enough. I devoutly hoped that this was true. I thought they were ghouls, but you can never be sure these days. For a time, we drove along the road towards the bank of trees. Both of us looked straight ahead. The sentries kept pace beside the van. Presently, the boy spoke again.
What am I going to do about the trousers?
Nothing. You'll have to make do with what you've got. We'll be at the gate soon. Your top half's smart enough anyway.
But
Smooth down your jacket. Get rid of any wrinkles you can see. It'll have to do. Right. I'm Squalls, and you're my son. We're delivering groceries to Heddleham Hall, fresh for conference day. Which reminds me, we better check what it is we're actually bringing. Can you have a look?
But
Don't worry. There's nothing odd about you peering in the back. Between us, in the rear wall of the cab, was a metal hatch. I gestured at it. Have a quick peek. I would, but I'm driving.
very well.
He kneeled on the seat and, opening the hatch, stuck his head through.
It's quite dark. There's lots of stuff in here.
Can you make anything out? I took a glance at him and nearly lost control of the wheel. The van swerved wildly towards the hedge. I righted it just in time. Your trousers! Sit back down! Where are your trousers? He sat back in his seat. The view to my left improved markedly.
I took my ones off, didn't I? You told me not to put the new ones on.
I didn't realize you ditched the others. Put them on.
But the sentry will see.
The sentry's already seen, believe you me. Just put them on. As he fumbled with his shoes against the dashboard, I shook my shiny head. We'll just have to hope ghouls aren't too clever when it comes to the etiquette of human attire. Maybe they'll think it's normal for you to be changing costume now. But the guards at the gate will be more perceptive. You can be sure of that. We were nearly at the boundary of the estate. Trees spanned the view through the windscreen. The road ahead curved into them in leisurely fashion. Almost immediately, the great arch came in sight. Constructed from massive blocks of yellow sandstone, it rose from the bushes at the roadside with the portentous solidity of 100,000 similar arches across the world. What particular lordling had paid for this one, and why had he done so? I doubted anyone knew. The faces on the caryatids that held up the roof were worn away, the detail on the inscriptions likewise. Eventually, the ivy that clung to it all would destroy the stonework, too. Above and around the arch, the red dome soared into the sky and extended into the woods. Only through the arch was the way clear. Our accompanying sentries were looking ahead expectantly. A few meters from the arch, I slowed the van to a halt, but kept the engine on. It thrummed gently. We sat in the cab, waiting. A wooden door opened in one side of the arch, and a man came striding out. At my side, the boy gave a slight shiver. I glanced at him. Pale as he was, he'd just gone paler. His eyes were round as dinner plates.
What is it?
I hissed.
It's him. The one I saw on the disc. The one who brought the amulet to Lovelace.
There was no time to answer, no time to act. Strolling casually, smiling a little smile, the murderer approached the van.